order, can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is being televised by Chelmsford Telemedia. Is there anyone else present that plans to record? Okay. All right, welcome. Before we begin with tonight's meeting, I just want to take a few minutes to congratulate our newly elected members and review some of the results of our reorganization meeting last Thursday. So our newest member is Maria Santos. Maria has served on many PTOs over the last couple of years and recently was the president of the Chelmsford Council of Schools, which is kind of the PTO of all the PTOs, and Maria will be serving as our secretary for the next year. Re-elected to a second term was John Moses, and John will be serving as our vice chair. In her second year is Donna Newcomb. In his ninth year now is Al Thomas. And then my name is Dennis King, and I'm in my third year, and I'll be serving as the chair for this upcoming year. So I'd like to thank all the members of the committee for their willingness to serve, and I look forward to working with you all over the course of next year. All right, the first item of business tonight is approval of the minutes from our last few meetings. So in your packet, you'll find minutes for our meetings from February 26th, March 19th, and April 4th. So given the fact that not everybody was at all those meetings, I'd like to take them one at a time, and we'll go from there. So I'll entertain a motion to approve our minutes from February 26th.
I move that we approve the minutes of the school committee meeting on February 26, 2019.
Any seconds?
Second.
Okay.
I'll
Right.
abstain.
Yep. So we have a motion and a second. I believe just Donna and Al and myself were there. So any corrections, any comments on those minutes? Okay. All in favor of approval? Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, so 2 ayes and 2 abstentions. Right, so next up are the minutes from our meeting on March 19th. So I'll entertain a motion on those.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular school committee on March 19th.
Any seconds?
Second.
Okay, any comments or corrections? I do have a correction just on liaison reports. My liaison report was for Center School. I believe it's down there as Harrington.
Ooh,
Nope, that'll be-
I will fix that
Okay,
before.
that's fine. Any other comments? So all in favor of approval?
I'll abstain.
Aye.
Aye.
And 1 abstention. So 4
Abstentions.
and 1 abstention.
Oh, you're.
I was not present on that one.
On the 19th?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah, 19th.
I abstain.
Oh, so
Right.
then can you still move
Oh, yeah.
that minute on that motion?
Yeah, if I'm not present,
I
you
don't
have
think
to,
so.
you have to
think
make
it's
that
okay.
one.
I don't think he can create the motion if
Okay.
he
I
wasn't
can,
at the
yep.
meeting.
Right, so Donna, would you like to
Good point.
make a motion to approve the
Make
minutes?
a motion to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting of March 19th, 2019.
Second, and all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So
3,
Abstain.
2
Three.
abstentions.
Three.
Right. All right, finally, our meeting of April 4th. I'll entertain a motion for that.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular school committee of meeting on April 4th.
Seconds?
I'll second.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
All right, any corrections on that one? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstentions, so 4 and 1. All right, that was quite an ordeal. All right, next up, our Chelmsford High School representative.
Over the past weekend, we sent various of our musical groups to the Michael Festival. The CHS band won a gold medal. The CHS orchestra, both the 9th grade orchestra and the 10th through 12th grade orchestra, both received silver awards, and the treble and concert choirs both received silver. The International Relations Club won Best Delegation at the UMass Lowell Model UN conference last weekend. The Bright Lights for Bright Futures dance raised $3,700 for Donna Farb's Jimmy Fund. The Stars and Stripes Shindig, which was over the past weekend, raised over $2,000 for Wounded Warriors. The Wellness Fair last Friday was a huge success. There was a section both for students and for teachers covering everything from exercise and diet to the importance of sunscreen. And as someone who went, I really found it interesting. The Triad Music Honor Society induction is April 23rd, and the English Honor Society induction is May 1st. The Thursdays, our a cappella group will perform in New York at the Town Hall Theater on Broadway, Friday, April 26th, for the finals of the International Competition of High School a cappella. Thank you.
Okay, any other good news?
Yes, we got a few items. So overall, our MCAS is going well. We have our elementary, middle schools taking the MCAS now. High school finished last week. That was ELA and mathematics. And they'll be prepping for, obviously, the science next that will come in June. So all's going well with this online testing, which is nice. The center school had a Paris luncheon. They also coupled that with their bus expectation week. They call it like a bus push week. And the students were able to make the bus drivers cards, and the PTO contributed with a special gift to the bus drivers, so it was really nice and inclusive, and, you know, the kids' expectations are clear, and apparently it's been reported that all the buses, they're doing very well on the buses now, which is nice. And the Byam School had their talent show on Saturday. It was reported by Principal Fredette that the students wowed the crowd with all of their talents, so that looks like a fun night. And also McCarthy Middle School had their talent show, McCarthy's Got Talent, last Saturday as well, and that was a hit. Students from the instrumental performance music ensembles that you were talking about, also our middle school students competed in that same MICA competition, and they did very well over the weekend. And I was going to piggyback on a couple of things that you were talking about. You talked about the UN model team, the speech and debate team from the high school. Also, they hosted a successful state competition last week. The Science Olympiad finished 15th out of 55 last week at the state competition that was for the high school. The McCarthy Science Olympiad finished 8th out of 32 teams at Assumption College for the state competition, and many of our students received ribbons for the individual events. And the tetraponic, does everybody remember that? Growing system at CHS, they moved it into the PAVE classroom, which is a student support classroom for harvesting, and with senior Kelly Marshall, they're working on developing a student handbook for the system so that all of the students can participate in that.
Great. All right, anybody else have any good news? Okay. All right, so now we are to the public input part of our meeting. If you'd like to speak to the committee about any of the items on tonight's agenda, please come forward and state your name and address for the recording secretary. Okay, all right, moving on then to new business.
Thank you very much. First item on the agenda this evening, we're very excited to have South Row Elementary School here today. As you know, each of our school committee meetings highlights and focuses on either one of the departments or one of the schools in the district and some of the programming and activities that are taking place. So we have Principal Molly McMahon and Assistant Principal Jason Romalo, and I see a number of staff members and students, so we're happy to hear what's happening at South Row.
Yes. Thank you so much for having us tonight. We obviously have a very wonderful representation in the crowd of students, staff, and parents. And we're very excited to highlight South Row. The past couple of years I've come and I've presented on social emotional learning, and I know that many of the schools have done that this year, so I was trying to do something a little bit different. So we're not going to only focus on that. We're going to really kind of look at the school improvement plan and highlight a lot of different things that have been happening around South Row this year. Do you want me to take the clicker?
Nope, there's no clicker.
Okay.
And stop working. Oh, please, keep talking.
So the first slide, even though you can't see it yet, is highlighting our school improvement plan. So in terms of our academic goals, we've been focused both on implementing the next generation science standards, as well as focused on implementing iReady. iReady is a tool for both math and ELA. It's both a diagnostic tool, so to tell where students are at, but also an intervention tool. And SEL-wise, this year, South Row has piloted Tier 2 interventions while also still obviously keeping Tier 1 in place. So you're going to hear about some of these initiatives tonight. So with regards to science, and you'll actually hear from John Morris in 2 weeks. He and I have been working closely on a project that you'll see kind of on our last slide, but I know he's presenting in 2 weeks. So you'll hear a lot more about the curriculum then. But basically, every grade level is now implementing 3 different science kits through FOSS. They're very hands-on. They're inquiry-based, which means that the students are really focused on answering a question and getting to the answer through experiences, and it's been a huge success. I would also say I think the teachers very much appreciate that we've been rolling out 1 kit at a time, so they have time to really get to know the curriculum. As you know, elementary teachers teach everything, so it is quite a bit for them. And so we are on year 2 of earth science implementation across K through 4. This year, we introduced physical science, and next year, life science will be coming. We've spent an entire PD day on this, when we had the full PD day, as well as on one early release day. And as I said, with elementary teachers teaching across 5 subjects, as you can imagine, we've added quite a bit of science curriculum, but we haven't added to the school day in terms of minutes and hours. So the coordinators have been doing a wonderful job kind of working across subjects to think about how we might integrate this best. So we've been working on that with our staff as well. What you'll notice across several of the slides is in yellow, and I think this is a really important thing to highlight, is just, as you know, in schools, there's always a ton of initiatives going on. What I think is really nice about the pieces that I'm going to talk about tonight is that they're in the district improvement plan, or strategic plan, I should say. They're also in the school improvement plan. They're also on the PD calendar, which means we're actually providing the PD that goes along with the initiatives. And finally, at South Row, I should say, many of our teachers, not all and not every single one, but have set some sort of goal in one of these areas in terms of the teacher goals. So it's, again, that alignment and that focus on just a certain number of initiatives. But we thought it would be better for you to hear about science from the students. So first, we've got Jack to come up. We're going to leave these pictures up so you can see science in action. And Jack is going to come on up and tell you a little bit about the science curriculum.
Hello, my name is Jack Gabwell and I am in Miss Tice's 4th grade class. The new science curriculum in 4th grade has 3 units. This year we have learned about soil and rocks and how they erode in weather. We did experiments that had us breaking up rocks. We used the sledding hill as our laboratory to watch erosion and weathering over 2 months this fall and winter. Now we are studying energy and magnetism. We have lit bulbs, run motors, put in switches, and built our own electromagnet to lift steel washers. We even made a paperclip float in midair using magnetic forces. Next month, we are looking at worms, snails, and guppies and the effect of environment on their habitats. We will be going to Murphy Field on a field trip to look at an actual environment and its elements. We enjoy working on all of this in groups and sharing failures and successes.
Next, we have Libby coming up from 3rd grade to tell you about science.
Hello, my name is Libby and I'm in Miss Sanborn's 3rd grade class. There are many things I like about our science program. Let me tell you about some of them. One of my favorite parts of science is working with a partner to investigate and experiment. I also like observing and writing notes in my science notebook. It is also fun to test out and see what works best in an experiment. Last but not least, I like building things out of materials like straws, paper clips, and discs. Those are some things I love about science.
And finally, we have Sophia in 4th grade coming up.
Hello, my name is Sophia DeRosa and I'm in Mrs. Matthews' 4th grade class. What I like most about our science curriculum is the investigations. I like that we get to do experiments with soil, lights, and circuits. For example, one of the investigations we did was learning about open and closed circuits. We tried to light a light bulb and run a motor by connecting wires, a light bulb, and a motor to a D-cell. We also made an electromagnet with wire, a steel rivet, a switch, and some D-cells. Our highest number of mini washers we could pick up with the electromagnet was 5 to 7 mini washers. I love the science we do in our class because it is really interesting and the investigations help you understand what we are learning.
And I will say they wrote these on their own, so they are very excited about the science curriculum.
Switching gears a little bit, talking a little about iReady. As Molly mentioned at the beginning, it is tied into our school improvement plan. So iReady is a great program where our teachers were provided professional development in it, and it really is used for both ELA and math and providing support for students. It's also used for interventions as well, and has a lot of great attributes to this programming, and teachers are utilizing it in small group instruction in their classroom and also together. And since it is overall district-wide initiative, we've done professional development and several opportunities this year, professional development, where teachers are given the opportunity to really learn a little bit more about it. If it's an overall district-wide initiative, we want to make sure we're giving teachers that opportunity. And we split it up into diagnostic testing, overall online interventions, and a teacher toolbox. And kind of like Molly talked about at the beginning, in yellow, it is overall tied into our district-wide improvement plan, our school-based improvement plan, our professional development calendar, and teachers are utilizing iReady as professional learning and student learning goals, which is great. So the teachers are embracing it thanks to the district support with the professional development. But we're going to call up Cohen Nice, who's going to talk a little bit about iReady from the student perspective.
Hello, my name is Cohen Nice, and I'm in Mrs. Duncan and Mrs. Kennedy's 4th grade class. In my classroom, we do iReady. iReady is a program that lets you do math or reading. We have iReady time during our technology round every day. We practice to get better at our math and reading skills. At the beginning of the year, we took a test on iReady. Then, in January, we took another test to see how we improved. My teacher had a data chat pep talk to try to get us to try our hardest and improve. I like iReady because you can see your scores. It's exciting when you get a high score and improve. And here's the data chat.
So if you want to see what a data chat looks like, there's a form that they use. Great job, Cory.
Molly talked a lot about we're really focusing on social emotional learning. It's an overall district-wide goal, and we've done a lot of work over at South Row within social emotional learning and PBIS. And the first kind of tier to PBIS is Tier 1. And when you're thinking about Tier 1, it's all expectations and programming that all students get. Thinking about social emotional learning and PBIS compared to like reading, right? In reading, kids receive a small group instruction, they get lessons from their teachers. When we're talking about behavior, it's the same type of thing. We have an overall school-wide passport, which is up on that top corner that we're actually going to have a student talk about in a little bit. But that's our overall school-wide language that we use and expectations focused on being respectful, responsible, and safe. Students get pride tickets for exhibiting these expected behaviors. We also use Second Step to teach social skills, which is done with Fidelity over at South Row, and really focusing on giving kids the tools to be able to perform in different social situations. Again, when we're thinking about this is tied into our district improvement plan, our school-based improvement plan. Teachers have gotten professional development in PBIS, both at the school level and district level throughout the year, and it's tied into our teacher goals as well. We're also going to go over a little bit about a homework matrix, which came out of our parent discussion night this year, but I'm going to have Macy come up and talk about the steps within the problem-solving steps within Second Step, and I want to start off by saying she did this all by herself. We are so proud of her, and again, Macy's in kindergarten and was able to really identify these steps, so can't wait to hear from her.
Hi, my name is Macy. I learned the problem-solving steps. The S step is say the problem. The P step is the T step is think of solutions. The E step is explore the consequence. The P step is pick the best solution.
So even at the,
I'm sorry, we're gonna pass around, so she wrote this all by herself, and the only word she needed help spelling was consequences. So we're gonna pass this around so you can see this.
And it's great to have, even at the kindergarten level, students being able to identify that key steps for problem solving. So we were very impressed. Great job, Macy. At the beginning, I talked a little bit about our overall school-wide passport for our behavioral expectations, which is something that we value at South Row. But I thought, again, hearing from a student, a little bit about from the student perspective with the passport. So I'm going to call up Tara to go over a little bit about our school passport at South Row.
Hello, my name is Tara Feeney, and I am in Miss Driscoll's 4th grade class. South Row Passport teaches us about the respectful, responsible, and safe activities we should be doing while school is in session. For example, the hallway is one of these locations in our school where classes are working. We should be respectful of the classes that are working because if we are too loud, they could be distracted. We should also be respectful of the classes that are working because there could be student work out in the hallway off to show for the rest of the school. And we should always be safe in the hallways because if we're not safe, somebody could get hurt. If we follow the rules in the passport, we can make the school a better place for everyone throughout the school. I will now gladly pass out.
Great. At the beginning, I talked a little bit about going over the homework matrix that came out of our parent discussion night. And this was something that we focused on this year within our Tier 1 kind of programming. And I'm going to have Jacqueline Duncan, our 4th grade teacher over at South Rose, our PBIS coach, has been instrumental, along with the whole team, in rolling out PBIS initiatives. So she's going to talk a little bit about our homework matrix.
So back in January, we hosted a parent discussion night. We were trying to find a topic that would engage families as well as keep them coming to the parent discussion night, because it's such a great opportunity to keep them up to date on happenings and get them involved with our school community. One of the things that we decided is the passport that we just discussed at school went over so well. We were thinking about how can we connect this to the families' home lives. And one of the things we thought of is what is an area that is difficult for families, and the biggest complaint as a teacher that I often hear is homework can be a disaster. For one reason or another, they work so hard during the day, they're done when they get home. So we are trying to help families use the same common language that we're using in school as well. So we started with a blank matrix. Our 3 school expectations are be respectful, be responsible, and be safe. So we started there, and we said in your home, with a collaboration of the PBIS Tier 1 team, all the parents that had arrived that night, and we decided to figure out what would that look like. So in your household, being respectful during homework time, what would that look like in your house? What would being responsible look like at your house? And how could students be safe while doing their homework at their house? We figured this would be a nice carryover between school and home. And if they started hearing it in kindergarten, by the 4th grade, hopefully they're pros. And just that carryover of that commonality in the language we'd hoped would help. Our plan with this is that we are going to print it in with nice pictures in color. We'll get it copied, and we are going to send a copy home to every family in the fall to hopefully post wherever their homework spot is at the children's houses. Anything else? Yeah.
Great, thanks. And this was actually just a couple of pictures from this parent discussion night, as we kind of, like Jackie said, kind of facilitated this discussion. And also we participated in a mindfulness activity, and this was very well received by parents. Mindfulness ties into PBIS and social emotional learning. So the parents enjoyed practicing their mindful strategies as well.
So, as I said at the beginning, we piloted Tier 2 this year. So, again, it's a pilot. But when Biome came to speak, they told you about this as well. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we did follow a very similar process. We collaborated to make sure we had something that would be successful. But long story short, we really wanted to make sure, I think as a school staff, I should say, I think we're very well aware of some of those students that have externalizing behaviors or externalizing social emotional needs, but sometimes our internalizers get lost. And so in working with Eric Mann, our consultant for PBIS and the tiers, we kind of looked at a screener that staff could fill out. Again, when you talk to staff, most of them can tell you exactly who they're concerned about in their classroom for different reasons, but we wanted to kind of make it very official and make sure that it was followed properly with the same protocol so it wasn't inconsistent across the building. So we did do a screener during a staff meeting, and from there we held a decision day, or 2 days, and we talked about many of the students. We actually weren't worried. You know, for some students, some of these are just personality traits, and that's okay. We're not worried. For many students, we said, well, we already have this, this, and this in place, so we're also not worried. For some students, we did say we might need a longer meeting. We might need to refer this back to the IEP or 504 team. And then we also wanted to pilot some interventions. So again, you heard about this from Biome, but basically we piloted a check-in, check-out system, which is really a child coming in the morning, checking in with a trusted adult, not their gen ed teacher, not their homeroom teacher, somebody else that they feel like they can go to. And it's not because they don't already love their general education teacher, but really it's just nice to have another adult connection in the building. And same thing with the end of the day. How was your day? It's very positive. It's not necessarily behavior chart based or anything like that. It's just a positive adult connection. We also, for some students, really worked on like an incentive plan, something that could really motivate them. For other students, we actually piloted a motor group, so kind of getting energy out. And for some students, a motor group is revving their engine up, so needing to kind of get a little more awake. And for some students, it's revving their engine down. They're moving too much and they need to kind of calm their body. So through our OT, we were able to create a space in our OT room for that. And actually, as a result, we've now put up motor stations on every corner of our building. So if a student wants to take a break, take a walk, there's exercises at every corner of the building to kind of, again, rev up or rev down their engine. And then we also did a zones booster group. Our music teacher ran this, and really it was just having students identify what zone they're in. So again, the green zone is ready to learn, blue is kind of sad or tired, yellow is kind of getting excited, and then red might be more out of control. But really getting students to identify where they are and how do they get back into that green zone and being ready to learn. So again, this was a pilot this year, and from this we've taken a lot of staff data and surveys, and we're looking to implement it better next year. I think it will still be a work in progress, but I think overall for a pilot, I would say it went very well this year. And actually, sorry, with that, I'll pass this around. So this was just sort of a description of each of the groups that we tested out. All right, so going into some highlights of the year. So I should say we could probably put this on every single year. As you all know, PTOs work extremely hard, raise a lot of money, and do a ton for enrichment for our schools. But really, this year we just had a very unique, awesome set of 4 whole school enrichments that came to the building. In addition to that, all of our grade levels received 3 other enrichment programs that are related to their curriculum. But we wanted to highlight what happened this year whole school. And again, just a really big thank you to the PTO because they are what makes this happen. So in terms of our first one, so many of you hopefully read about this in the paper. Sam Drazen came to visit us. He has the same disability as the child from Wonder. And one of my teachers, actually she's here, Mrs. Driscoll, had read about him in the paper and recommended him to me. So I had connected with him and his message is just amazing. So really, his nonprofit is really based on disability awareness, but really his message is about differences awareness. And I would just say this was just a very unique program, because I can't say we've ever done this at South Row, and I would imagine in other buildings too, where we were able to provide PD to staff in the afternoon, a parent night that night so parents could hear his message, and then the entire school heard him the next day. He did 2 shows, a K through 2 and a 3-4 show. And then on top of that, he offered to stay and have lunch with 10 to 12 students from every single grade level. And he was just amazing. I think we all talk a ton about the word empathy and how important that is for our students to understand, for even us as adults to understand. But I think one of the most important things that he said, and it just resonates with me all the time, is that awareness is that foundation of empathy. If you're not aware of other people, you're not aware of their differences, then you can't really be empathetic. So he just had a really powerful message for all of our students. He told them all about his journey with all of his surgeries and his hearing loss. Lots of funny stories about having a hearing aid in a classroom and an FM system. But he just really did a wonderful job with the students. The parent discussion night we did open up to the district, and there were parents from other buildings that came as well. And again, the staff PD was excellent. And again, his message, although again, disability awareness, really differences awareness, and how can we make our school environment more inclusive. So it's just a really powerful professional development opportunity as well as an enrichment opportunity. So we want you to hear from Vivian, who's going to tell you about the visit with Sam Drazen.
Hello, my name is Vivian Kim, and I am in Miss Weber's 2nd grade class. Sam Drazen came to our school this year. He is special because his face was different than normal. It must have been really difficult to go through this, and I felt a little bad for him. Overall, I think he came to teach us to treat everyone kind, even if they are not exactly like you. Kindness makes a ripple that always comes back, by Grant. Kindness is like a boomerang. When you throw it, it always comes back to you. by Brianna and Max. Kindness is like peanut butter. You have to spread it. By Dominic. Kindness is like a ball. It always bounces back to you. By Alex.
So at the end of his presentation, he challenged all of our students to think of their kindness precept and what kindness means to them. So those were written by students across our building. So our younger grades actually wrote them as a class, and then our older grades wrote them individually. And every morning we are still reading them on the announcements because we still haven't gotten through them all. And then every once in a while, I get another one sent to me by a child or a teacher. I thought of another kindness precept, so it kind of keeps his enrichment alive.
And it doesn't take long to walk through the hallways at South Row and see kindness is truly everywhere, from the staff to students to the overall community. And we've done a lot of kind acts throughout the year and different kindness initiatives. On the bottom, there's a few pictures of our music teacher who organized an event for children to go sing at Summers Place, which is in town, and it was filled with children that came and their families to sing to people at Summers Place, and that was wonderful. We've also done classroom teachers doing kindness challenges, such as the 100 kind acts throughout the year on the 100th day of school. We did a pay it forward type event and a kindness challenge week, where the students were challenged to do something kind for anybody, which was great and well received. And towards the beginning of the year, we did a Start with Hello week, which really encouraged our staff and overall community to just greet children in the morning by the door. A quick hello can go so far, and it really gives us a good indicator of how the kids are feeling when they're coming in. And Dr. McMahon and Mrs. Cooper are pictured there holding a nice sign in the morning. And we also created a Take What You Need bulletin board in the hallway where students could come and take a pick-me-up positive comment or even write a comment for people to take up on that board, and it was very well received towards the beginning of the year. We also do kind acts, and we're in one right now where we're doing a can drive to support the Chelmsford Pantry. So we try to do one each month. So we're looking forward to getting a lot of donations for people in need in our community.
So our second visitor this year for enrichment was Peter Reynolds, and many of you have heard of him. He's a very famous author. It turns out he also went to South Row in the Chelmsford Public Schools. His book, The Dot, is inspired by his math teacher, Mr. Matson. And he contacted me last June, and he wasn't even sure if the school still existed or was still open, but he wanted me to know he went there 50 years ago and was wondering if I'd ever heard of him. And I had to pick up my jaw as I listened to his voicemail, and then I called him back, obviously, and we definitely invited him to come. So he came and spoke to our students. He just really tries to inspire creativity and being yourself, and he just has so many amazing books with those same messages. So we thought you could hear from one of our students, Declan, who was very inspired by Mr. Reynolds.
Hello, my name is Declan Young, and I'm in Mrs. Stagnan's 3rd grade class. Peter Reynolds is an amazing author and illustrator. He writes encouraging books that make you do great things. One of my favorite stories is The Dot. This book encourages people to push beyond themselves and do what they never thought they could do. His books show bravery, perseverance, courage, and believing in yourself. This author and illustrator is truly amazing. He grew up in Chelmsford and even went to South Row, too.
Declan brought his signed copy, because Mr. Reynolds spent quite a bit of time signing books, but I'm going to also I can send around my copies if you'd like, so you can hold on to yours. I'm going to send around 2 of his books in case you want to take a peek if you haven't heard of him. So, Ooch World was our 3rd enrichment visitor, and this is Ooch in the center of the screen. He calls himself a children's life coach instead of like an adult life coach. He has a variety of shows, but one of the things, as I'm sure you can imagine, that we face in schools is kids wanting to be perfect and being sad when they make mistakes. So he presented a fantastic program on how important mistakes are and that you learn so much from mistakes, and sometimes you learn more from making mistakes. And he just is a lot of fun. Everything had a dance, had emotion, had something funny. He was like a live DJ at the same time. So his message was wonderful and very engaging for students. So we're going to hear from Zach a little bit about the Ooch World presentation at our school.
Hello, my name is Zachary P.S. and I am a 4th grader in Mrs. Driscoll's class. Uchtwald taught us about making mistakes and what we should do when we make a mistake. He taught us the 5 things that we should do. The most important was to fix it and tell what you did. The day before I did make a mistake because I broke one of my brother's Legos. I told him and I stopped touching it. Everyone makes mistakes. Mistakes can help you learn. Thomas Edison failed 1,000 times and still didn't give up. As Thomas Edison once said, I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was invented with 1,000 steps.
We also had an exciting program just recently, our yoga and mindfulness program. This is our 2nd year having Kim come and meet with our students and just review overall strategies such as just working on breathing, getting ourselves in a mindful state, practice meditation, and various poses with the students. And she really just had a great positive message. And again, tying into that whole social emotional learning, it was a great opportunity for the kids to try something different and also have some more strategies in their toolbox. So we have another student coming up to share about yoga and mindfulness.
Hello, my name is Brooke Walsh, and I am in Mrs. Stockman's 3rd grade class. Yoga is when you stretch, and it helps your body and brain calm down. You should be peaceful and relaxed when you stretch. When you are mindful, you can slow down and enjoy things more. You take time to think about how things feel, look, sound, and taste. I love this program because the stretches calmed me down, and they were fun to do. Now I want to show you a couple of the poses that I learned.
Do you want to step right over here where there's some space and you can show them a couple of the standing poses?
Awesome job. And hard to do under pressure.
The first pose was warrior pose, and the second was tree pose. So I just wanted to also give a shout out to our staff members. This year we had quite a few pilots and new things happening at Southrow. I've come to present on the Strive program. That's been a success. We also started the breakfast program this year, which I'm sure you've heard about, and that has also been a success. I talked a little bit about the Tier 2 pilots tonight, which was also a success. And then learning walks is something that we just tried for the first time 2 weeks ago. So we are looking with the mentoring program, looking to get teachers watching each other's classrooms. This is some of the best professional development you can get. And so the mentoring program, so brand new teachers to the district were able to come to South Row a couple of weeks ago and tour classrooms that had volunteered themselves to take a look at transitions, routines, and management. And it was just very well received. They had a debrief in the morning, went around, they had 3 or 4 classrooms that they were able to visit, and then they did a debrief at the end. Dr. Kirkpatrick led this along with Melissa McMahon, she's the head of the mentoring program for the teachers, and it went very well. It was very well received. You can see some pictures on the right of teachers taking notes in their debrief. And I think a lot of teachers in our building, I know at least, were very inspired. They're already asking, when can we do this as a school? Because we can get so much from each other's classrooms, so that was great. Finally, the last pilot that we did was collecting some data on Second Step. We're going to be fairly brief about this, but Second Step we've been doing now for kind of back again with Fidelity since retraining the staff for about 3 years. And one of the things we talked about was actually collecting data on, is it making an impact? So we had pilot teachers, 1 per grade, and then our whole 3rd grade team decided to join it together, and we took a pre-test with our students back in October, and then the post-test will occur in those classrooms in May, so we don't actually have the data for you tonight. And then at the same time, we thought it was important to keep data on teacher fidelity, and we asked them to be very honest, but really, are they actually finding the value? Are they teaching it with fidelity, et cetera? Because obviously that should match our student data. And so we got some results. Sorry. The pre-test averages are up there in terms of, and again, this is only based on one classroom per grade, as again, a pilot. The units of study that Second Step goes through, which I know you've heard, is skills for learning, emotion management, empathy, and problem solving. So some of the results that we've gotten are.
So when you're looking at, we completed a Google form that looked at the teacher fidelity data. So when you're looking at a couple of these graphs here, you're looking at a continuum of 0 to 5, which is strongly disagree to strongly agree. And we're going to highlight a few of the questions of which all of our teachers answered that were part of the pilot. Am I committed to helping my students achieve the goals of the program? You can see a really high number, which speaks within the pilot to fidelity of the programming. Believing in the importance of implementing Second Step as well. Again, very high numbers that came through in regards to our teachers responding, which is great. Looking at the overall goals and objectives of the program, so teachers feel that they have an overall understanding about what is expected of them to demonstrate effective lessons. And believing that students benefit from the program, again, high as well. I mean, not all, when we think about programming, not every single program is perfect, but Second Step certainly has great strengths and great lessons that our students are provided.
So we have some parents that joined us while we were here, and they're going to talk about a few things, a few events. One, the International Festival. The second one will be the Science Fair, and the third one will actually be a new initiative that we've taken on this year. So they'll just a minute or two about the actual events. So this is Mugdha.
Hello, I'm Mugdha Joglekar. My daughter Anisa Vora goes to first grade at South Row Community. So about 4 years back, Dr. Mackman got a bunch of parents together to get some ideas going on how we can celebrate the cultural diversity that we have at South Row, and that's how International Festival came into existence. It's a fun, enriching event that happens over a spring afternoon, over a weekend. Just to celebrate the cultural diversity that we have across the school, where students get an opportunity to learn about different traditions, different cultures across the world. It's a 2-hour event. Basically, we have 3 parts of the event. The first part is the parent-directed interactive stations, where parents can volunteer and represent any country that they want to talk about. It doesn't have to be a country that they are from. They can pick and choose any country. If you visited a country over a summer and if you want kids to know about it, you can do that. As you can see in the pictures, there are some stations where we offer kids different activities. They can play an instrument, they can do some crafts, we teach them words in the native language, or we write their names in different languages. So that's part of the stations. The other part is the student display boards, where student can make a trifold and bring it to the festival. They can put anything on that they want to show about the country, maybe different food, different weather patterns, festivals, anything. And then third part is the performances, where students actually go to the stage and perform. They can sing a song, they can do a dance recital, or they can basically play an instrument, anything that they want to show. So the whole intent is basically to celebrate the diversity that we have. And this year, our festival occurred over past weekend, and we added a new concept called as Parade of Nations, where all of the students were given a flag, and then they marched across the South Row hallway holding that flag, and that actually brought a lot of community participation in together, and we received a very positive feedback from students that they enjoyed the parade. So it's a fun event. It's we are always looking for ideas. We have a great committee, so it's feel free to reach out to us, but the whole purpose is to celebrate the community and diversity. Thank you.
I'm John Craven. I'm a father of a second grader at South Row. And on the Wednesday after February vacation, we held our 11th annual Science Fair, which is co-sponsored by the PTO as well as the South Row School Council. This year, we had over 80 students prepare and present projects. both related to the science curriculum and those things that just interest them and make them curious. I feel a real disadvantage to talk about science after our students talked about it so well. But it is that passion that we kind of plug into with the science fair. And the kids really get animated about putting together their projects, doing their research, and presenting their conclusions to the judges. I know that many of you have served as judges. Mr. Thomas, Mr. King, Ms. Newcomb, as well as Dr. Hirsch have been involved. And it's been a great part of our community and, again, demonstrates all the great things that are going on at South Row.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm South Row's PTO president, and I'm going to talk on behalf of Megan Curran, who is spearheading our school garden and courtyard classroom. And I'm going to read what she wrote. There are so many wonderful benefits to a school garden. They are a wonderful way to use the schoolyard as a classroom. John Morris has highlighted how the garden can be incorporated into each grade level science curriculum. Studies have shown that schools with gardens show higher science achievement scores. Along with the academic benefits of school gardens, there are also social and emotional benefits for both students and teachers. Studies show that large numbers of students report feeling calm, safe, and relaxed in school gardens. 68% of students showed that they were learning with family and friends, which can help spread the benefits to a much larger community. Students learn focus and patience, cooperation, teamwork, and social skills. School gardens can also help instill appreciation and respect for nature that lasts into adulthood. The students are our future lawmakers, and we need them to have a strong connection to nature. Finally, school gardens are a great way to get children learning about nutrition. They have the potential to encourage children to increase their willingness to try more fruits and vegetables. They can improve nutrition knowledge and attitudes towards healthy eating and instill an improvement connection in their food and where it comes from.
So just to wrap up, obviously we talked about a variety of topics tonight. Thank you all so much. And you got to hear from many people from South Row. And we just kind of wanted to make it all connect. Obviously, the goal of schools is academic achievement. And I think we get there at South Row through everything you heard about, positive school climate, engagement of the whole entire school and community, high quality curriculum, research-based assessment, as well as the relationships. So thank you for having us tonight. We really appreciate it. And next slide.
And we got a little inspired around St. Patrick's Day. So we purchased Lucky to Be Principal shirts, and we truly are very lucky to be the principals over at South Row. We're so lucky to be surrounded by the wonderful staff, students, and overall community, as you could see tonight. We're truly proud of our school community. So at this point, if you have any questions or comments.
Yes, thank you for coming this evening. I am very fortunate to be the South Row liaison from the school committee. The first thing I want to say is thank you to the teachers. I think the teachers really create a tremendous learning environment at South Row. They do just an outstanding job with the students, and that is clearly reflected in the students' presentations tonight. I also want to mention the parents and the PTO spearheaded by Emily Dilworth. They do a terrific job. I've had the opportunity to participate in the ice cream social, the science fair, and I was just at the International Festival over the weekend. And the participation of the parents really such a tremendous example for the children in terms of community involvement and investing in the schools. And everything that I've seen has just been really just top notch. The science fair, Mr. Craven, was incredible. I took pictures so I could show it to my high school kids that I teach because I was so impressed. And I said maybe they could learn how to do it the right way this time. And then the last thing I want to say is that really all of these happened because of great administration. And I think that you two have done a terrific job this year. My first introduction to Mr. Ramallah was at the ice cream social, where I learned that I don't spray the whipped cream correctly.
I don't either.
There is a right way, but only to find out that he actually worked at Kimball's for many years, and so he had a distinct advantage. And then with regards to Dr. McMahon, just in the last couple of weeks, I've had the opportunity to meet a retired teacher who spoke about how you inspired her, and that she was able to leave after many, many years of teaching, feeling really good about what she had contributed in her experience in teaching. And she thanked you for that, as she was able to experience the last 5 years, I think it was, that she was at South Row, in a very innovative, encouraging, and enthusiastic environment. And then the last thing, I got to share this story. I was out walking in my neighborhood with my dog, and I ran across a mom and her son, who was a South Row student. So he saw my dog, and he asked if he could come over and pet the dog, and I said, of course, come on over. And so I said, where do you go to school, and the whole thing, and he told me, and I said, well, I'm a member of the school committee. And he's like, I like your dog. Not impressed. Not impressed. But then I said, I know Dr. McMahon. Whoa, stop, right there, okay? I had just elevated my status through the stratosphere, okay? Because he could have cared less, okay, about my position, but the fact that I knew Dr. McMahon meant everything. And his parents, his mom, and he had so many positive things to share about the South Row community and their experience at South Row. So, and that's a tribute to all of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment from me. I just wanted to say it's kind of amazing to see the impact schools really have on people. To have an artist come back all those years later and to remember and call and say, hey, I want to look back at this time in my life. And Chelmsford's been a great town for that. And I think it goes without saying that Mr. Mattson, who he named in the book, wherever he is, thank you for being that kind of teacher. So thank you.
Yeah, I gave him a tour of the school before,
Yeah.
and he remembered every single classroom he had been in.
Yeah.
And he believes Mr. Mattson still lives in Chelmsford, so he'd actually love to come back and visit and meet Mr. Mattson at South Row.
That's amazing.
So
That's
we're hoping
amazing.
to arrange that.
So great work to the teachers. I mean, that's really the key point there. So teachers have long-lasting effects on students for the rest of their lives. So thank you.
Anybody else?
I went to your fair this weekend as well, representing the EL Council. The mom who did Hannah, my girls still have the Hannah marks on their hands, and it was absolutely wonderful. It was very inspiring. You've been inspiring tonight, and I really would like to congratulate the PTO. I think the PTO has done a tremendous job over the last few years at South Row, and it's wonderful to see that the integration of the enrichment in your programs that you're running and the tests that you're running, the pilots that you're running. So that's wonderful to see. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think it's really important to stress a couple of the points that have been made. One, if you took away all of these things that couldn't take place because of lack of money, which comes from the PTO, or lack of time and support from the parents, it would be a totally different and much more, to be blunt, negative school. I mean, this is just tremendous that the kids have these opportunities. One point that was made, and I just want to pick up on it, it was mentioned that you're doing collection of canned goods and so forth for the food pantry. One of my
I'm so sorry.
favorite things is to claim that Chelmsford Public Schools are the largest charity in town, because they are. If you listen to the different reports from the different schools, in the high school, because it has so many clubs and everything, there are so many ways that the schools give back. And I think it's really important to talk about that, because a lot of times we hear about, we're spending a fortune on these schools, what do they ever do? They do a lot. Not only do they raise great kids who are very intelligent, but they also give back to the community, which I think is really important.
Thank you.
And just to wrap up, thank you both for coming tonight. Thank you to the parents, but especially thank you to the students. You all did an unbelievable job to stand up here and present the way you did, and so articulate and everything else. So if you wouldn't mind, if the students could come up here so we can just get a picture with them.
Or even if they wanted to, come right up,
Just stand right there.
the kids can come up
Here?
right behind you if you want.
Behind us?
And then
So we can get one big picture with them.
we'll say he will take a big picture.
So you're gonna face this way. So Macy, yeah, come on up.
Oh, yeah.
You want to go right next to Macy?
Yeah, come in front of the chair.
So you're gonna look at Dr. Hirsch. Dr. Hirsch, can you wave so everybody looks in one place?
Kids, come in a little closer.
A little closer.
Come closer.
Come closer.
We don't bite.
We don't bite, you know that.
You guys can come up here and take a picture straight on. I'll just do it right over Dr. White's head.
You do whatever you need to.
Yep, I'll edit that. Go ahead, come on in. Don't be, we don't bite.
Great. Anyway? No. Okay.
Thank you.
Great, that was a great job. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Congratulations, students.
And sharing South Row with us.
Give them a second to.
Yeah, we'll give them a second for it.
I'll send you the pictures.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you a bunch of pictures too.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything tonight.
Keep them out.
Yes.
I am. I have to put a lot of them together in order to do that.
Amazing. It's super interesting.
I put the electronic in, so, I mean, you're welcome to if you want to, but you don't have to.
We know how to clear our room.
I know.
They're tired.
Yeah, the little guys.
Oh, yeah. They were amazing, though.
They were excellent speakers.
Good.
Excellent speakers.
That's an incredible body of work. It's just unbelievable.
Things have changed so much because no one would have thought early, a number of years ago, of having kids come forward. They wouldn't have even asked them, never mind expected them to. And so it's a huge change, which is really showing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Good?
I think we're good.
All right.
All right.
Safe.
All right, so next item on our agenda is discuss our next public forum. So I believe at our last meeting, we decided to have our last forum on SEL, social emotional learning.
Yeah,
Is that
correct.
correct?
Yep.
Donna's making me face. Is that?
Yes, and I think a little curriculum overview as well, we had talked about, and that is,
In terms of how the SEL works into the curriculum and things
yeah,
like that?
just an
Right.
overview of the curriculum, and then how, SEL is one layer of one of the many things that we do.
Yeah. And Dr. Lang reached out to the police and also looked at the school schedule, and
Right.
it looks like May 6th, which is, I believe, a Monday.
It
works
is,
out.
the calendar's getting a little tight just in the springtime with competing events and whatnot. But Monday, May 6th was available at the police department in their training room, where we've had the last two public forums. It's easy for Chelmsford Telemedia to televise from there. So that night happened to be free, so I tentatively booked it. If that night works for you, we can go with it, and at the next school committee meeting, we would actually prepare a draft agenda for you that we would start to share with the public. But wanted to just run that date by you first to make sure that it was going to be a viable date.
Does that work for everybody?
I'm gonna go with yes for now. I
Okay.
might have to be late for that, but
Okay.
I'll be there
All right.
either way.
But everybody else said it's a Monday, which is, we've been doing them on Tuesdays, but it just didn't work out.
The
'cause
Tuesdays didn't
McCarthy
work.
and Parker
Right.
had new students and all that stuff.
Right.
All right, topic-wise, Donna, you?
No, the only thing, I think, I just want to clarify something on the curriculum. The reason I mention that is I think that sometimes that there's pieces of things that we do in the system that people don't understand or, may not understand the purpose of. For example, the curriculum coordinators. We talk a lot about curriculum coordinators, but I'm not sure that people really understand the scope of what it is that they do. And it's pretty impressive, what it is that they have to do. So that's what I was referring to when I was talking about curriculum, not necessarily about the nuts and bolts of what we're teaching day in and day out, but more of this kind of overview so that people understand how all the pieces fit together.
Other thoughts on?
Well, it would be interesting to show and understand how the social emotional learning component fits within the curriculum. So if you can somehow talk about that and show it in this forum, I think it would be really good. That's what's missing. For example, the presentation we just had was absolutely amazing. One of the questions that came to my mind is, how are the EL students being addressed? How is that English language learners issue being addressed within this whole social emotional component of the learning? So it would be really good to see what all the interactions are. That's one of my thoughts.
What we'll end up doing is we'll sketch together an agenda for what that night might look like. And we'll present that to you at the next school committee meeting. You can review it, obviously give input. If we need to make any modifications or whatnot, we can do it that night. And then that still gives us about 3 weeks before the session on the 6th, before we start advertising and really pushing that agenda. So we'll go put a draft agenda together that has the overarching umbrella of SEL, but how it actually ties into the different curriculum areas and the different supports within the district. And then we can talk that out at the next meeting.
Great. 7 o'clock, you figured?
We had done 7 previously. It's open that whole night. So I just tentatively said 7, but we can do, earlier or later. I don't know what is best for parents in the springtime.
So for me personally, it's my son's birthday, so I'll definitely be doing bedtime stories and everything. So whenever you start, I will show up.
You could just, okay.
Yeah. So, but we should go forward with the date because we have the space.
And then one thing I'll agree with Al's suggestions that, knowing what all the acronyms, the PBIS and the Tier 1, Tier 2, I mean, we've known because we sit through it, but, the parents in general, just understanding all those. Various
I think
acronyms.
it'll be helpful too when we go through this, so we can do the whole overview.
Yeah.
It will be televised, it can be replayed for people.
Yeah.
So if parents aren't able to attend that night, you could still go see the video, and we can put that on a loop. Did one of you have a suggestion?
Southro's monthly PTO meeting is that night, just not that that's.
Unfortunately, we were bumping up on everything. When we got into the springtime, we had multiple negotiations going on. We did our PTO meetings, council meetings, awards nights. It was very difficult, and then we were also trying to work with the police on the location.
A lot of student, like, the middle school kids moving up, was it like orientation nights? Things like that?
The feeder nights,
Yeah.
I forget exactly, what's the name of
Those
the...
were those Tuesdays.
Yeah,
The move-up nights?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the students moving up from 5th grade to 8th grade. They happen to be within the same week. It's just this
The
time of
curriculum
year,
nights, yeah.
there's going to be constantly something happening basically every night.
I'd leave the time at 7 rather than make it earlier,
Yeah.
because in the spring, between baseball and lacrosse, and them all, they'll all be going until close to that time.
Okay, great.
All right, so we'll draft an agenda and bring that back on at our next meeting.
That'd be good. All right, next thing is just a discussion on liaison assignments. I just wanted to talk about a couple things. We did put a copy of this year's liaison assignments in the packet. And a couple things I want to talk about is just look at the list and decide, are there duties on here that we're really, nobody's actually going to these meetings, and maybe we need to remove them or find some other way of interacting with those groups, and other things we want to add to this particular list. I know was mentioned before with the new ELL group, perhaps having a liaison to that. So, I mean, looking at that list, are there ones that we really don't need on that list? Like the recycling committee, for example. I mean, I think, John, you're on that. I mean, has there been any need for you to go to any meetings of the recycling committee?
No.
I mean, economic development, should we remove some of these ones that we're really not? And, maybe we reach out to these groups, say, if you would like one of us to come to your meetings, just reach out and let us know.
Yeah.
Rather than have them as a specific liaison assignment, and that way we can maybe add some different ones.
And also that they're welcome to come here, too.
Right. So, besides the two I just mentioned, planning board, we need a liaison to that?
Only if we have a major project, maybe, but I think we work through the superintendent who works through most part on that. In turf fields, do you guys meet on turf fields?
See, I get the sense that they were like standing committees in either town previously, or obviously there is a planning board that meets regularly.
Yeah.
And there's a school committee liaison assigned, but I also get the sense that you wouldn't normally go unless there was a school project on the agenda to be talked about.
Right.
But we've always just kind of had these standing assignments.
Well,
I think it's good the other way, too. If those, like, along the line of what you're saying, if they want to know who they should come to.
reach out to.
They know who it is, but, you know.
Planning board, one of the things I can think of is that if we have new developments in town that are going to impact what's going on in the schools, that might be very important for us to follow, but not necessarily have to attend every meeting. The other thing I don't see on here is Board of Health. And I think Board of Health is extremely important because you've got the wellness, you've got all of the, contagious diseases and all of these different things, including social emotional components that they're really pushing and trying to get across in the town. Mindfulness was one of them, I remember. So there's a lot of things at the Board of Health that we might want to keep an eye on as well, and that they can liaison with us.
Are they represented in the Wellness Committee, Donna?
No, Wellness Committee is really school-based.
Okay.
Totally different.
But, I would say about these things is that, I agree that it's important certainly to maintain a relationship with them. But I think that for the times that they're going to get in touch with us, unless we've cultivated that relationship, the first person they're going to call is the superintendent. I think that I think what we have to do is we need to get in the habit of maybe at the beginning of each school year is maybe sending out a letter from the school committee saying, you're welcome to attend a meeting, you're welcome to reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns, but I don't think that we necessarily need to make it a formal assignment.
Okay, so maybe I'll try to draft something in terms of that, to reach out to some of the, I think we definitely should keep liaison to the Selectmen, the Finance Committee, Capital Planning. I think those are all important ones, and I think ones that, we generally do tend to attend those meetings when they have to do with the schools. But some of those other ones there, how about the group above it, like the Business Association?
So I will say with, like, for example, I go to the Friends of Music meeting, and I think one of the things is it's nice for me certainly to hear what's happening, but I also think it's nice for the group to have, they ask for an update from, what's happening with the school committee, so it's nice to have the opportunity to get that information out. And it's also nice to be able to support these groups, because the Friends of Music is actually not part of the schools. I don't know that people realize that. So to be able there, because they work so closely with us, to be able to offer support and guidance when they need it.
So you keep them?
I think we should keep them.
Al Alumni Association, you're already obviously on the board already, so,
Yeah.
you would go on with that anyways. Boosters Club, I attended a few meetings, but again, there might be a group that we said, reach out if they would need us there. The PTOs, I think, are the big one. Those are the ones we definitely should be attending. Those are the ones, that's our connection with the parents and and the administrators in those schools. So I think that is very important that we do attend those, and that if we can't attend a meeting, that we reach out to whoever the alternative is to that position to make sure that somebody's there for those meetings. So I think that's our main focus as liaisons, because I know anytime I go there, I give a report and I learn a lot about what's going on there, and then we can bring that back here. So that I would definitely say is our subcommittees. Policy. We did a lot with that, and so hopefully, but that's good to have that superintendent evaluation. What do we decide? Is there a committee for that, or is that not supposed to be a committee anymore?
You know what, I have to look back last year at the advice we'd received because of the change in regs. I believe how we left it that the information was submitted to one individual, I think it was you last year, and you, as the chair, put it all together into like a summative document, and then it was shared with the members at the same time. Let me look at my notes. I think there was an issue with multiple members having the information at the same time, and when it became a public document. But I'll look at that and I'll email the whole committee.
All right. And then, those other, facilities maintenance, I don't know if that committee met at all, would meet at all.
No, anything in these subcommittees has really been a committee discussion.
Right.
So.
Right.
Finance and budget, same thing.
Same thing.
All our budget stuff is.
Right. It's been an entire committee discussion and decision.
Okay. All right. And then the, negotiations are undergoing. We're undergoing them right now. So we're actually Custodians, we're already done. We didn't have to worry about, we've already done the administrators and food service.
Correct.
So we just have the teachers and support personnel at this point, so we really shouldn't need to do much there. The ELL, does that
I
need
would
a
like to,
liaison?
yeah, the EL council would be really interesting.
EL council?
I would like
Is
to
that what it's called?
continue on and
Okay.
do that. So how do you do your assignments? Are you reassigning right now, or what are you
You
doing?
know what, I'm gonna ask for people to email me the preferences.
Okay.
And that way, everybody can look at the list a little bit more and decide, and, you know, if there's an assignment that you've had in the past that don't wanna be on, let me know that. Otherwise, I'll probably say if you've been, I don't know, at Byam School, in the past, and I don't hear otherwise, I'll assume that works for you.
Yeah, Byam.
Or whoever, South Row, but if you wanna move on from a group and try and go to a different school, and I'll try to mix up with elementary and then the middle schools and high schools, so everybody gets, to get to different schools. Donna, you mentioned senior center. Do you think we need, or is that another one, just kind of reach out in general?
I think I'd reach out in general.
Okay.
And, you know, to Al's point, I think the more that we can bring this, what the students are doing to the community, you know, they're just so impressive. I think the better off that we're going to be. I mean, it's basically showing what people are investing their tax money in, and I think that's just a great way to do it, is to get to the senior center and, you know, have people here and whatever else we can do as far as community outreach.
All right, so I'll try to, like I said, I'll try to draft something in terms of reaching out to those types of committees. In the, kind of in the same vein of assignments and things like that, Joanna and I talked briefly about warrant signing. Those have done in the past, it's a tight window. We usually get a notification on Thursday afternoon, and usually have to have it done by Friday, or else they send it off on Monday, so you've got to reach out and see if maybe we can get another day in there somewhere, either Monday or Thursday or.
Right, I think it's, we can do Friday, Monday.
Okay.
And then just have it over to the town, we can bring it over Monday night.
Okay.
And then we might have some exceptions when there's holidays and things like
Okay.
that, because
So maybe getting another day will make it a little bit, you know, so before, if you weren't able to come in on Monday and you couldn't get until, on Friday, you couldn't get until Monday afternoon, it was already town hall, which is fine, but I think it's much better to have it in your office, that we have questions, we can go into your office and say, hey, you know, what's that, so.
And we'll reattach the original annual dates of the Fridays. Right now, just Fridays are on there.
Right.
So people can just check their calendar, see if they have a conflict, because a year out is a long way to plan for.
Yeah. And if anybody has an idea on a better rotation, you know, I know it's kind of like you're on, 3 cycles, then you're off 2 cycles, something like that.
Right, we just tried to make it even and kind of gave you maybe a couple months in a row, but if you'd rather not, we can, you know, change that. We're very flexible.
Okay. So if anybody has any thoughts on that, just let me know, and I'll sit down with you and we'll try to figure out
Yep.
how we do it. Okay. All right, next is the vote on the MSBA, I believe.
Yeah, next item on the agenda, excuse me, is a vote to authorize me to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority a statement of interest for Chelmsford High School. So if you recall, a couple months back, we actually came before you and requested permission to submit a statement of interest for South Row's roof. This was actually under the Accelerated Repair Program. There's 2 different programs with the MSBA. That we did submit, and just as an aside, we actually got an email last week saying that they were gonna come out right after vacation week and actually do a site visit and take a look at that project. So that's encouraging. So I'll be able to report back to you after we have that meeting. But running kind of parallel to that, there's a different program called the CORE program. So this is the larger program with the MSBA. Previously, the last 2 years, we've submitted an application for consideration for a high school project, which, again, is kind of multi-layered. And we'd actually talked about perhaps in May, kind of revisiting our whole facility strategy and what a long-term plan for the facilities is. But as a first step, we need to try to get into the MSBA pipeline for funding. So this will actually be our 3rd year that we've submitting an application for a new school or a major renovation addition project to the MSBA. It can take districts multiple years, multiple attempts to be able to actually get invited in to have the conversation with the MSBA about funding. So this will be our 3rd year applying again. So we have kind of retooled and retweaked the application a little bit. There were really no substantive changes because it aligns with the Dora and Whittier study, and that's kind of our evidence for the and supporting documentation for the plan itself. So that is before you this evening. The MSBA does have specific language that they require communities to vote on. We attended the Board of Selectmen meeting last night. The Board of Selectmen voted in favor of the submission. They need to vote in favor, and then the school committee does, and then I'll submit all the paperwork by Friday. So the vote is laid out in the memo that I prepared for you. Again, it is lengthy, but you do need to read the vote into the record.
All right, so just read from the recommended down.
Read from recommended down.
Al, you sure you don't want one for old time's sake? All right, thank you. All right. Having convened in an open meeting on Tuesday, April 9th, 2019, prior to the closing date, the School Committee of Chelmsford, in accordance with its charters, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the Statement of Interest form dated April 5th, 2019, for Chelmsford High School located at 200 Richardson Road, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and priority categories for which the application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future, including the elimination of existing severe overcrowding, prevention of severe overcrowding expected to result from increased enrollments, replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems, such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility, and replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with the state and approved local requirements, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the Statement of Interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the city, town, regional school district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Okay, any seconds?
Second.
Okay. Any questions people have on this? Do we have to do roll call?
It just needs to be a regular vote.
Okay. All right, all in favor of approval?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0.
I'd say I nailed that. That was pretty good.
Very good reader.
I know how to read.
So that's good, thank you. I'll get that submitted by Friday, and then we'll follow up with the MSBA as well on our project. Next item on the agenda this evening is an amendment to the 2019-20 school calendar. So this is next year's school calendar, which the school committee has previously approved. The start and end dates are not going to change, but we had the election schedule for next year was released, and the presidential primary dates and things like that, we now know what they are. So Linda has put a memo in the packet that basically just requests that we move the two of the professional development half-days to align with the election days, to align with the school calendar. We still use the McCarthy Middle School as a voting site, and we typically try to have the election day be a half-day for students to just be less disruptive around parking and access to the building and things along those lines. So the PD days were like off a week. So this is not changing start or end dates of the school year, only moving those two PD dates, and they're included in the memo.
Anybody have any questions on that? So,
I do have a comment. Is that all right? Here's my comment. My comment is I wish very much we actually didn't have school on these particular days. I think especially during a presidential primary that would be so important, but the calendar is already created. I'm not, that's what it is. I know that, because I've been there, that the staff at McCarthy takes this extremely seriously and in the security component of things, and I appreciate that they do that. I think there was some legislation trying to be moved to get more facilities available in towns. I'm hoping that's going somewhere. I've kept on following this legislation because I think many places recognize that this is a security issue. And I do know that at McCarthy, they have taken this very seriously. But just that comment, because I think that's so important. So I'm glad to see that we are reducing the security risk by doing this.
Just as an aside too, I did put that, the legislation update on our list of things to talk to our reps about
Right.
when we go to Day on the Hill, just to see if we can kind of advocate for pushing that legislation forward.
That would be great.
Right. Need a motion to make changes?
All right, I'm gonna wing it.
Go ahead.
All right. I make a motion to move the half-days from Thursday, March 12th to Tuesday, March 3rd, and Wednesday, April 1st to Tuesday, April 7th. Is that good? Does that work?
Okay. Any seconds?
Second?
Okay, any other questions on that, comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
So we will make modifications to the school calendar. We'll update it to our website. We will send a notice out to parents. But again, do not want to panic people. The start day is not changing for the school year. All we're doing is moving the professional development days, and only 2 of them.
Speaking of which, we don't need to do anything about a last day for this year?
There's no formal vote that the school committee takes. Typically, we wait until after April vacation, just to be like super sensitive to that. So I think on the 23rd, like, we'll kind of announce what it is.
Okay.
Barring any unforeseen circumstances, the last day for students is Wednesday, the 12th, and the last day for staff is it's a half day the next day, so it'll be Thursday, the 13th. Well, it's a half day for students on the 12th.
Correct.
Right.
That's what I was gonna say, it's a half day.
Right, but that's the last day, and then they're off for the summer.
Okay, great.
But we'll formally put that out there, then we'll put a little announcement out also after the next meeting. Item number 6 on the agenda is the fiscal 18 financial audit of the Massachusetts Department of Elementary Secondary Education. This is the end of the year financial audit. Happy again to provide this to you. We just got the hard copy yesterday, so that's we updated to your packet. Joanna does have printouts of the report for you if you'd like, but the PDF is in the packet. Like to thank Joanna and the staff in the business office for doing another great job on the audit itself. Again, a couple of years in a row now, no financial findings, not even any recommendations for improvement. So that's really telling from the third-party auditor. And Powers and Sullivan does a nice job. They're very thorough in their review. So really good news to report. Again, commend Joanna and her staff for the job that they do on this. And once you acknowledge the report, we'll also send it to the not the tri-board, to the FinCom. Yeah, the FinCom. And then the town manager's office always gets a copy as well. So happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions on this? So do we have to vote on this?
Just to
approval?
vote to accept it.
Okay.
I make a motion to accept the FY18 Mass DESI end-of-year audit report.
Second?
Seconds, okay. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And if you
Nice
do want a
job.
hard copy, please just see Joanna at the end of the meeting and she can give you one. I'd actually like to ask Joanna at this point to walk you through the next report, which is an update on the turf field revolving fund. We had talked a little bit at the, a few meetings back about just doing an update on the particular revolving fund
Those are
itself.
just out of order, I don't know if you want to.
Out of order.
Did I miss something?
Yeah, you missed the CHS.
Enrollment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then, item 7, I was looking at my reports out of order. I'll actually ask Linda to give you an update on the student enrollment at the high school and our work in scheduling for next year.
So I know there's a lot of information in here, and it's kind of hard to understand scheduling if you're not doing it on a daily basis. But what happens at the high school level is a little different than what you'd see at elementary and middle school. Students are not in teams. They are in classes based on either their grade or their choices. So one of the things that we have to do at the high school level is to do a couple of things. One, we have to go through and find out what the students are recommending for classes that they would like to take. 2, the teachers put in recommendations for the students on classes that they have to take, so your basic English, math, science, social studies, and then there's the opportunity for the students to choose after that fact. So what happens is we receive what's called tallies, and we have an idea of how many classes we would need to run in order to fulfill student schedules. We try to always fulfill primary requests, especially when it comes to electives, because, we don't want students to just choose classes just to get the process done. What has happened over the past couple of years is we've been looking at the trends, because we know how many students actually go to Chelmsford High School, and we've noticed that there hasn't been a significant
change in some of the courses that are running, how many students are in those courses. And what we have noticed, though, is that staffing-wise, we've had more staff than necessarily students for the courses. So you'd find some courses that have some very, very low numbers. And in doing that process, and I'm looking at my big schedule that's right here right now, we noticed that we could make some reductions at the high school that could be reallocated throughout the district. One of them being a high school math teacher, one of them being a high school arts teacher, and the other one being a high school history teacher. In the past, we've had some reductions already in mathematics and also in arts and also in English. English has had 2 reductions over the years. It's going cyclically with how the reductions were happening at McCarthy. These kids are now moving up, so there are the numbers. So what you'll see in the next couple of pages are those requests and those sections and the averages. Now, these doesn't mean that these kids are already in these classes. What happens is we set recommended max for classes based on levels and what the course is, or we have like specifically OSHA requirements that we have to pay attention to in the science, and then that gives us the cushion to be able to make the classes go up and down based on student needs, students moving into the district, out of the district. So what you'll see here is the averages are not some of them are actual. We'll have an idea of how many kids would be in there, but they will change based when the schedule is actually run, and we see what classes kids actually fall into. Some of the barriers that we run into for scheduling is singleton classes, your APs, right? They tend to bump up against each other. If you have kids taking multiple APs, they may not be in one of their elective courses that they have. So these are not absolute numbers, they're just averages. So based on these, we see that the big dips would be in, obviously, mathematics, in the arts, and also in social studies. One of the things that we want to make sure that we keep intact is the programming. So it's not as if we're going to one department and really starting to pull that department apart. We still want to have a robust program for students to have different activities to be able to take, and also to explore different contents that maybe perhaps they wouldn't have explored before. So based on that, this is the numbers that we're seeing at this point and the recommendations we're making from the high school.
Any questions?
Do you have, so if this is a position reduction, right? So do you have an idea of where the teacher would move to? Where you're going to move them?
The contract dictates how that process goes, that whole reduction in force process goes.
Right. But I'm saying, do you have a plan for the teachers where they're going to end up?
Yeah, so what's happening at this point in time, we basically have to do this work to basically run the schedule. So we have factored in all of these different course selections into the schedule. So it'll now take a week or two for the computer to kind of optimize and actually run this so that we can verify that these numbers are accurate.
Okay.
Right, so this is just, first request for every course that every child signed up for. People obviously don't get their first request for everything. You've got to make sure that you have enough courses being run at different times of the day to really accommodate your needs. Assuming that all goes well and these numbers hold, then this basically is identifying that we can reallocate 3 staff members from the high school elsewhere in the district.
Okay.
Now, some of the positions are, they may have been like a 1-year position anyway, so technically that person just wouldn't come back. We could reallocate the position elsewhere.
Okay.
There are bumping scenarios as well, based on if you have, a department that has people in it that have more seniority over other people in the district, there can be kind of bumping rights. So we're playing those scenarios out at this point.
Okay.
We just won't ultimately commit to a schedule that we wouldn't want to have class sizes be too high or ever have it impact our actual offerings, but we don't want to run classes just for the sake of running classes if we can still maintain our ratios. And then I'd rather come to you and have you reallocate those staff to other more needy areas of the district.
Okay.
So it's really more of an update view at this point.
Okay.
We're not asking you to, the budget's been set, these positions are technically in the
Okay.
budget.
Yeah.
We're just gonna run the schedule without them to see what happens.
See what it looks
And
like.
then if it looks good, which I think it will, just based on these numbers and our historical numbers, we'll come back to you and say, all right, we're not gonna fill this position. We're gonna recommend you move it here.
Okay.
Or move the money here to fund another need.
So this is not for voting on tonight, is this for discussion?
This is for discussion.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. First of all, it's really concerning to me that the recommended max is 26 in a class. And make sure I'm understanding these numbers, okay? So the recommendation that you're suggesting here is that you would have an algebra 1H class with 26 students. When I go down this list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 classes in this group have 26 students. You take 8 of the, one out of each one of these classes, and let's say that you reduce it to 24. You're gonna have another whole class available here. So this is really concerning to me because we have that 25 number in mind, at least I do, when I think about our district and how we're allocating students to classes. I think especially at, I know a personal example. If you take geometry, the AP geometry right now at the school, it's a very large class. It makes a huge difference in what a teacher can and cannot do. The student basically needs to go up when there's a question. The teacher does not have time to address the individual student in the class when they know they need a particular help because the number is large. So I'm kind of digressing a bit, but the concern to me in here is those are very large numbers. When you go to world history and that whole list in the next page, you're looking at numbers in the 24s as a maximum number. It doesn't meet that 25. So my next question is, what happens during the school year at the high school? I don't know that. Do we usually get students that come in during the school year? What kind of numbers are we looking at when they do come in? What happens in those classes? This is a concern to me personally, on the class, the number of people in the classes.
I would recommend, and then I'll let Linda speak to this, don't get hung up at this point on the recommended max.
Okay.
Because that's a parameter we have to feed into the computer to basically have it run its scenarios. If you look at the averages on the right, that's the actual, the primary is, say, if you look at the world history, even though it has a recommended max of 24, there's 121 kids that have actually said that that's their first priority for a course. Based on that 121, we're saying we would recommend, and we're going to put a schedule together with 6 sections of that. So if you had 6 sections of that, the average would actually be 21 per class of the 6.
So
24 is a parameter for the computer to use. Because there are different times of the day where you have different courses that are kind of butting up on each other. So you're not going to have 21 in every class. But you may have a class that has 24, and you may have another class that has, unfortunately, 19, because of the way you're trying to get every child as many of their first preferences as possible. But I would, for right now, until we run the scenario, look more at the far right column, because those are going to be more close to what your averages are than the recommended max.
So what happens when you get a number like a 36? What is that?
Yeah, so that intro to stats class that you see, that's not a class that we would have to run, that's an elective course for a student to take for mathematics. So not all students are gonna be able to get that course because of the way the schedule will run, especially APs. Because if you're taking upwards of 4 APs and you're scheduled for 5 to 6 classes a day, something's gonna hit up against that. And that's where conversations happen for students. We're like, okay, what is it that you really wanna be taking? Where do you wanna be? So high school scheduling is extremely fluid. They're scheduling all year long, and especially when the semesters come along. So even some of these numbers in these averages that you're seeing, they're going to shift. So students move in, students move out. It tends to be, pretty equal. We don't all of a sudden have this large influx of, 20 students showing up at the door, 20 walking out the door. We already have an idea of how many students are going to be there. These numbers actually indicate, we already know that there are 38 accepted students going to Neshoba. So we've already even pulled those students out to make sure that the numbers are not, not making sense. So I think what Dr. Lang was saying too is that the averages are really where you want to be, because that's what's going to happen with the courses. You're going to see about these many students going in there. And if we go back to the historical data that we have, how many students asked for those classes in the past, and how many students are actually physically sitting in seats now, we know that those numbers are pretty accurate. So they're not the 36s, they're not the 38s. They're elective courses, so there's many students that might want to have that course, but they're not all going to have it.
You also have to put the parameters into the computer.
It has to.
Because if you don't put a recommended max, then it could go over.
Correct.
It could,
need to have
one
that
section
flex.
could end up with 35 because you didn't put a cap in the computer on where it needed to stop.
Okay, so this again is for discussion purpose, and we're gonna get actual numbers on what's going on before you decide whether or not to eliminate the positions.
Yeah, like I said, this is an update for you tonight with what we're doing. We're basically building the schedule without these 3 positions in there to see how this looks. We can provide you another update after the schedule is run with how this looks. But again, just to get hung up on, say, that intro to stats class, there were 36 kids in total that actually recommended or wanted to take that as an elective. It's not a required course. So that's not going to fit in everyone's schedule. So if you take the 36 students, we know historically we offer 1 section of that. We wouldn't offer 2 sections and then have 16 kids in an elective, because not all 16 kids are even going to get into it. It's going to butt up and it's going to compete with something else in the schedule that might be a required course that they need. So that's why, I know it says 36 is the average size, but if you're only wanting 1 class, that's going to bump down to the high teens, low 20s, once the schedule works out. But once the schedule is done, yes, we will give you another update with what the real-time numbers are at that point. To your question on flux, as many kids leave the system as come in during the course of the year. So you are going to have kids leave and you are going to have kids come. But we basically, before the end of the school year, commit to a schedule for the fall.
Okay, so, for example, on this Intro to Stats course, what's the impact of the fact that now the kids can, these young people can actually sign up for college level credit? So what's the impact on this? Do our teachers still teach that? How does that work?
Yeah,
They
they'll
do.
teach,
Okay.
they'll teach the class.
Yes.
So just to give you an example, like I'm just looking at the AP Stats course right now, we have 3 sections of it this current year, 20, 19, 23. That's how many students are in these 3 sections. So I'm looking at actual numbers.
So these numbers are not, because I'm telling you.
Not perfect,
I
you're
look-
never gonna be able to take the kids, divide them up perfectly. This is the same at middle school. I mean, I can tell you, as a middle school teacher, I would have a class of students that would walk in with 26, and my next class could walk in with 17. I still had 100-plus students, but then it's never going to be like a perfect divide them up, and you'll have exactly that many numbers. Because even during the school year, students tend to make some changes within their schedules, because they may have decided that they made a choice that wasn't the best fit, or we've decided that that choice is not a good fit. It is a full-time constant, I mean, Al, you might be able to speak to, is constantly changing the schedule. So these numbers will ebb and flow. You'll never have the consistency that you might see more at the elementary and the middle school.
Right, and remember, some of these are juniors and seniors, I would imagine, taking this class. So if
They
they
have
get bumped as a
opportunity.
junior, they have the option of taking it as a senior. So they're not locked out completely.
Okay, so the fact that, is it because more kids are not signing up for the maths that we actually don't have as many in the maths? Or
No,
what
we just don't
happens
have
with
as
that?
many students.
Not as many
The
students,
student
okay.
enrollment has gone down. That's what the change is. It has nothing to
Number
do
of
with.
teachers will stay the same. as
Yeah,
number
they
of
have to
kids will
take
go
4
down.
years of mathematics, and then they can take elective courses on top of that. So we have Mass Core requirements of 4 years of mathematics, 4 years of English. You have to have 3 years of at least a science-based, like a biology-based lab class, and 3 years of social studies. Our students take 4 years of everything and then some. So a student only needs 240 credits to graduate from Chelmsford High. Our students graduate well over that. Their schedules are pretty full, about 70 credits a year.
Okay.
And they make those changes, and then we have the semester change too. The other thing that you're seeing too is some of those classes, those sections, they're half-year classes. So they would go from this class and then move on to the next class that they would like to take for an elective.
And when it comes to the art teacher position, now, I know that there are different types of art. Okay, so I would think that some teachers are more uniquely qualified to teach a particular type of art and so on. And probably this is controlled within the contract, so, you know, you can't choose which teacher you're going to keep or not. It's gonna go by the contract. So I'd like us to really think about that and what the impact is on the overall offerings that are happening
All the same courses are
in
running.
terms of that.
So we did not change anything for the course offerings, and the teachers that are
Okay.
there are very well-equipped to, and this is in consultation with some of them too, to say, if we make these changes within the schedule, what would work for you? And teachers also asked to teach specific classes at some point, like they didn't get a chance to teach it once before, they're like, how about I get a chance to take it? So they're pretty collaborative when it comes to this work, but all of these offerings that you see for fine arts is all the same offerings we currently have. Because that's also a graduation requirement.
Yeah, going to the comment I think John started, which was what's the alternative for these teachers. I'm hoping truly that, you know, if they're really wonderful folks who are really good teachers, that we would do everything possible to keep them within our system.
Well, and that's the other incentive, just to even flagging this for people early on, because we've started the hiring process for next year. So we've opened up openings for people who, you know, these people may be licensed to go teach at another school. If we had, like, I know we had an art opening because of a retirement. Well, if this person at the high school knows that there may not be enough kids to support the number of sections we need at the high school, I would rather have that person have an opportunity to apply to our opening as opposed to lose them from the district. So this is why it's timely as well, and we try to kind of forecast this for people so that they can be out there actively going for other jobs, and not just kind of sitting back and kind of hoping that things work out.
Again, it's a reallocation, so if these three positions, we can deal with them at the high school being lost, then maybe we can deal with some overflow at the elementary level, whether it's first grade or kindergarten like we had at Center this year. So, you know, that's, unfortunately, the high school numbers are down and the elementary numbers are up. And eventually they'll make their way through, but.
And this has nothing to do with finance, this isn't being done for financial reasons. The budget is set, it's not like these reductions or reallocations need to occur for money. It's just to have, you know, say, high school classes in the, you know, mid to high teens, when we have a need, say, at other, whether it's middle schools or the elementary schools, to have class sizes be more advantageous. It's hard not to make these reallocations.
And all those moves are done through the contract language anyway, right?
Well, yes, the contract would govern any of the reductions.
Okay.
But I was just talking about kind of reallocating where your needs are,
No, no, I
your
get it.
resources to where your needs are.
Well, to Maria's point, though, I think that, you know, we heard a lot of feedback from parents about, you know, classroom size. And I think as we get into the beginning of the next school year, I think it's worth taking a look at the true numbers. And then also the number of students with disabilities, the number of English language learners, and anything else that may impact a classroom in terms of how instruction can be delivered. Because we do ask the teachers to do a lot. Between MCAS, the social emotional learning, you know, there's hardly any time left to breathe. And so to take a look at that, and as we go forward, to be able to figure out, you know, are these guidelines the ones that we want to stick with, or do we need to change them in order to be able to help the teachers be able to, you know, meet the needs of the kids that they have in their classrooms.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you.
Do you mind if we skip number 8 and go to number 9, because Dan is here, and take the Chelmsford High School athletic turf field signage proposal out of order? Would that be okay? Yep. All right, Dan, come on up. I forgot to email you the
I grabbed the
proposal.
packet.
Did you bring packet? Okay. Do you want us to put that up on screen for you?
If you'd like, so they can see. I mean, I have it here.
All right, I just need 1 second then.
Yep.
Oh, the school committee members have it. It's the viewing audience.
Okay.
So let me do that. This is, I think everyone knows, Ian Hart, our athletic director, and he has been working on some strategies to possibly generate some additional revenue for the turf fields. So we have turf fields at McCarthy Middle School, and we also have turf, all right, I'm going.
We're up until,
All right,
it's
hang on.
what we want to.
Hang on, I'm getting yelled at, hang on. So we have turf fields at the high school and McCarthy. And as a way to try to generate some additional revenue for that, Dan put a proposal together, so we'll have you kind of walk us through that tonight. Okay.
Let me get started.
Yep, you are on. So people at home can watch us.
Okay.
We're not.
All right, yeah, so in talking, you know, to Joanna and Jay and then people around, as you know, with our turf fields, we need to raise revenue, 1, to pay off the bond, but 2, to eventually replace them. They only have a certain life. there's no guarantee of what that life will actually be. But, with that, we're on a rental model. We need to rent these things out and have high usage for them. Well, the detriment to the fields is that when you use them so much, you actually reduce the life of the fields. So we're trying to find a way where we can, still create revenue, maybe take some of the stress off the fields, but also add things to them. Like we added a company that comes in and grooms them, which is very important. They come in, they do a balance test, they redistribute all those. If you ever walked on them, you'll get those 8 million of those little pebbles, the turf things, rubber pellets in your shoes. They redistribute all of those. They make the field look brand new. It takes up all the trash. They magnetize them, and it's crazy. They come out of there with spikes and coins and all sorts of stuff off that. But what that does is, that increases the life of the field. So it's very important that we have that both at McCarthy and at the high school. In order to do that, we need to take revenue kind of from those fields and add it in a different way. And being somewhat, I don't want to say creative, because if you've been to a bunch of different fields and seen fences, they put signs on them. But I think this is a way where we can do that without adding stress to the field. So the purpose of this, to add some signage, is to create revenue, to make the fields look a little more professional. If you look at our fields over time, everything's new right now, that fencing's new, but as we know with fencing, eventually that's going to rust up and all that, and you'll just see old fencing, and it just won't look, as professional as it does right now. And what this will do is we'd also limit wear through overuse. If you look at this for the desire for additional revenue, we need the bond. There's a bond that we need to pay off on this field. This would help with that. It would allow for the continued potential service, scheduled grooming, maintenance, and then if we were to do well, we could even do plowing. If we were able to plow those fields, like we're very lucky this year. We've already had, our lacrosse team's already played 4 games on them. Last year at this time, we got a snowstorm on April 1st. We didn't get out on the fields and play our first game till next week of last year. If we were able to plow that, which a lot of schools do, well, I shouldn't say a lot of schools do, a lot of places do, and they get an outside group to do it. It's not cheap. If we were able to do that, we would be able to keep up our rental schedule and give a guaranteed rental date in March. We would also be able to start everything on time, pretty much guaranteed, because they'd be able to clear it out for us. But we need a way to do that and pay that off. So if we were able to create additional revenue, this would be maybe a source to get that done. It would also allow us to purchase some new equipment out there, goals, track equipment, et cetera. That stuff is, not cheap, but everybody uses it. If we want to rent that field out to people, we need to have, things for them to actually use. We can't rent a soccer field out or a field hockey field out if they don't have nets. So that's just something to think about. And the purchase of future turf, like I said, that will need to be replaced. There's all sorts of studies out there that will tell you different times and different lives of what the, how long the turf fields last, but eventually we will have to, purchase new turf out there, and this can help with that as well. And as we've talked before, the high rate of rentals, if we keep using these over and over again, and we don't do any added maintenance or any of those things, it can limit the life of those fields. Signage proposals. Advertising signage would be on the existing fencing at the CHS and McCarthy fields. It would not obstruct the view. If you've been on those fields before, the fence heights from any of the seating areas, you look straight down that way. You wouldn't be standing and not be able to see anything. So really, anywhere, we wouldn't overdo it. We'd like to do it tastefully. Obviously, start from 50-yard lines out that way. That's where people would want their things anyways. But like I said, it wouldn't obstruct view. The signs would be metal. They're cut and rounded. They're safe to touch, almost like the company that that we've used for all the signage. The local deal is Evergreen Signs. It's a local person. They do the in memoriam signs over at Chelmsford High School, right outside the stadium. It's a good place if you wanted to check those out. They're soft to touch. They're they're metal, but they're durable as well. Some of those have been up there for over 20 years. The signs will be uniform, white signs, maroon lettering, one color logo. You won't have all sorts of colors all over the place, so it'll tie in nicely. And as I put before, we purchase them through a local business, but would also be purchased by local businesses and families who would like to advertise. And we'd have a screening process. Obviously, there'd be no ridiculous things on that or anything like that. It'd be tasteful. Price points and contract length, and this is compared up to a bunch of groups and some online research. The signs will be on a year-to-year basis or a multi-year, but really the multi-year would be 2. The more tiers we get into or anything like that, it becomes kind of tricky. In a 1-year plan, we're looking at, to have a sign up there would be around $600. A 2-year plan would be $1,000, so obviously they get a little break to be up there, but the benefit of that is we'd have the revenue right in the front. And all payments would be deposited in the turf field account, turf field revolving account for use through that. Production costs, the cost of the signs from the local vendor is under $100 a sign. It gets right between that range. We just kind of put 100 just in case if we were to go, full size, full graphic, all that stuff. We will be in charge of hanging the signs. I'll work with, the maintenance department guys who help me on my fields daily. It'd be, we can handle that. The repairs would be done by us. Something happens, the ball knocks it down or anything like that, we would repair that. And damaged signs through play or anything like that would be replaced through the turf field revolving account. When we look at potential earnings, the cost to us in the school department is zero. The revenue potential on the low side, I've already had plenty of people ask me about this, so I think we could, would shoot higher than this, but even if we look at 30 signs, we look at $15,000. That would be, if you look at it as a rental, that would almost double our highest rental of the year. So it would be, a tremendous gain for us. And then other areas to explore, the back of the McCarthy School scoreboard, if you look at that from when you're driving up, that's kind of that row where everybody stops coming from that area. We've had people talk to us about advertising on the back of that, and I just looked at that as, kind of an opportunity for us to raise some money that would go back into those fields or our programs. And then we've had people ask us, and this is kind of where we just got the idea of doing this. Like last year, some people asked me about if they could be end zone sponsors. Because at all of our high school game stuff, obviously our goals are right there, the end zones are right there, and they talked about, putting some signage on the back end to be end zone sponsors, and that's where we kind of got to this. And on the last page, you can see it's really just a smaller version, because that's like, our fencing is obviously taller and wider, but essentially they would look like that. We would not put any images like on that third one that says, Chelmsford Tree Service. It would all be logo-based. But as you can see, it's very uniform, just white and maroon. And just on the right, it shows you some, signage areas. And, we had someone last year, if I could just walk up there and show you real quick, but on this press box area, people would ask if they could put stuff up there. So that, as you see, that doesn't obstruct anything. And on this level here, where that fencing is behind, a lot of times at football games, we're on both sidelines. Everywhere else, we're either on the far side or on this side, and both teams are on the same side. So you would still be able to see them, but they also wouldn't obstruct anybody's view. And even from up here and on the other side, if we used the back end, if we had enough, it would actually work as kind of like a windscreen, which would help because that's one of the windiest places around. So it's just something, a suggestion, but a way that I feel could help us generate more revenue, and we've had people show interest already.
Anybody have any questions?
Seems to
Who
make
would
sense
do
to
all
me.
the, who would do all the selling and the,
Well, I'd put together a little committee, which probably consists of myself and my secretary and some others, and we would hammer it out, and we would make sure to get that done.
That's my only line of question is the maintenance of this, because I could see if, you and your committee are not available, what is, it has to be maintained somehow.
Yep.
You've got a contract going, you're gonna have to have these signs replaced, you're gonna have somebody actually go up and put them on that box,
Yep.
which is pretty high, all of that stuff.
Yep.
So is that all worked out? Is that something you?
Yeah, and we work with the maintenance department. They're right there, so their shed's right there anyways, and they're great at helping us with that. And I've already, reached out to some of them to ask when we do this, could they help us with it? And they were more than willing to help. And we've had some others that have, offered their help outside to help us with that initial project. But with the maintenance and all that stuff, I would hope they wouldn't all fall down at once, because I think I can handle 1 or 2 or 3 at a time.
Yeah.
But if it is something that's, larger and all that, I know we could get help from the maintenance people.
any other questions people have?
No, I thank Dan for bringing this forward. We've talked about it for a little bit. I think it's an interesting idea to generate some revenue. I think it's, the nice thing about it is it seems to be a nice recurring revenue source. So if you're a company in town that comes and actually buys a sign and hangs it up, I think there's a good likelihood that you'll want to either renew that sign the following year, or if it's a 2-year contract, just continue to renew it. And I do think that our fields get a good amount of use, so that parents that are coming to the games, might like to see a business advertised there. There's really not a lot of downside to us in doing this. I actually think you'll easily hit the 30, but let's say you only hit, 10. Still, bringing in $5,000 of extra revenue each year to the revolving fund for not a significant amount of work. We'll have to obviously push this to businesses and whatnot, but I think it's a nice, it's a nice offering. And I think it can be done in a tasteful way. in a uniform way, that it really is a nice kind of marketing tool for the fields. I put in your packet, there were 2 school committee policies that are applicable to this, because the school committee actually, to allow some kind of advertising like this, would need to vote to do that. So your current policies give you that option to extend this. I would recommend that you grant this to Dan and the athletic department to be able to do this. But I did put the 2 policies in your packet that are applicable, just so that you could have that in front of you.
I think it's a great idea.
Is everybody comfortable with voting on this tonight?
I'd like to wait till the next meeting,
Okay.
because I'd like to see if we get any feedback after tonight's presentation from anybody in the community, any pros, cons, or whatever, and then vote on it.
Sure. I mean, I don't-
Is this time sensitive? I mean, is
no, a couple weeks isn't gonna kill us, I don't think.
is it, okay, everybody okay? We'll put this on our next agenda to vote on this, and, you know.
So, yeah, as I read this policy, it's very broad. So again, goes back to you and your committee. Probably gonna create some guidelines for what these signs can and cannot contain and what they will look like overall, so that, you know, and I'm sure you do a tremendous job, and you're right there, but I'm thinking 10 years from now, or 5 years from now even, what's the guidelines that we're gonna tell people? And so just creating, it's a creation of the program itself, but just making sure of that, that would be important to kind of know that that's being done at the outset, because it's about the schools.
Yep.
And we run this whole thing, so.
Is that something you could throw together for our next meeting, just like what kind of guidelines you would give to people?
Sure,
In
I
terms
can
of
send
what's
something.
appropriate, what's not appropriate, just so we can kind of see that also?
If you want, we can work on that. I think we can also put a little cover memo together that would actually have some suggested votes for you to consider to take. And I know other districts have done this, so we
Yeah.
can even just kind of pull some of their
Great.
information together around, not a policy, but more like a procedure for what's acceptable, what's not. And, no, the delaying 2 weeks isn't gonna hurt us timeline-wise.
Yeah, and I would put that together anyway, so that when I send that out to people, they know what they're dealing with. So I wouldn't just call them and be like, hey, you know, give me some money, give me a sign. You know, I'd want to have those guidelines down so that, you know, they know what they're doing, and then that comes through, so I understand that.
I see this as, can be very pro-community. It, you know, it provides an avenue for people to do what they need to do too, and to reach out to us as well. It can be very positive, but it just needs to be done correctly from the beginning.
Yeah, the only thing I'd ask is if you do hear any feedback in between, just because we are gonna have a vacation week, just let me know ahead of time so that I can try to provide you whatever information you need for that next meeting, just to make the review and the vote go smoothly.
The interest in the end zones, that's not part of this proposal, right?
I don't know. I mean, my thing is, I think it could be, because it's essentially, I mean, it's all signage, right? I mean,
I think it's different. I don't know, I'd rather not personally have to get into the field.
Yeah, we can address that
But
as
there's
part of
no-
the vote, right?
When I say there's no there's no funding scale here or anything else, so we'd need to come back on that, I would think.
What do you mean by?
If he wants to sell the end zone, okay, we have here guidelines for what they're gonna buy if they put it on a fence.
Right.
There's no proposal, there's no guideline for
Right.
an end zone.
No, not an end zone itself. I'm just wondering, like, let's say signage-wise,
You mean on the fence in back
On
of
the
the end
fence
zone?
on the back
Oh,
of the
that's
end
all right.
zone.
I
yeah,
thought-
no, not stitched in. No, 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 I don't.
That was my concern.
That'd be
Okay,
like
I'm
a
with you on that.
$50,000 sponsorship.
Chick-fil-A bowl, you don't want that,
Yeah.
no.
Well,
Yeah, I think I
I'll tell you
think I
right now,
was
somebody would
thinking
buy
what
it
else.
if you put it out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, no, I think I was on the, I think I was, had the same thought you did.
Oh, good.
Yeah, no, nothing on the field. This is just the
this is
fencing.
3x4 signage.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm with you now. I just, that was my concern, though.
Yeah, when they said they wanted to sponsor the end zones, they meant the, like, you know, like the big
Yeah.
windscreen banners? They wanted to put the banners behind essentially where that field goal area is, so now every time anybody went.
Well, I
to
was
the
on the
Nets,
committee when we started all this stuff. Some of the stuff is much more, that was discussed was much more radical than any of this. This is very well, you know, the standardization of the signs and everything else is quite different than some of the original discussion.
Yeah, no, I think if we ever did something beyond the fence signs, we would have to come back with you with a
Yeah.
proposal.
That's
This is
fine.
really
Okay.
fence signage, but we'll work on that.
I'm sorry, I
and
was-
bring- No, it's, I hadn't thought of that, but I mean, it's good, someone else would, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
If it was out there, so we'll bring this back to you at the next meeting.
Another thing that just occurred to me, when I was at one of the recent contests, a lot of the shrubbery is dead or dying. It might, and without limiting it to that, you might want to generate a list of possible donations, like, for example, Rotary, okay? If you wanted to replace some of those and you can get a landscaper or somebody to donate it, I think people might be looking for other ways that they could support. You know, and I know districts do this with classrooms and so, if you'd like to make some things. So you might want to have something on our website, possible donations, you know, to help with minor things,
Right.
but make it better.
And maybe some type of signage to go, that this was donated by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for
Thank
putting
you.
it
Thank you,
forward.
take care, appreciate it. No, I'm glad, I wasn't thinking that way, but I'm glad you did.
I know from the beginning that people would
Yeah.
buy it.
Thank you for.
Oh, did you want to do anything with the?
We have to go back to this.
We're going
Yeah, we're
back
going
to
back.
Well,
this.
I'm going back, no, not with him.
Okay.
So, so we just covered number 9. We'll go back to number 8. This is the turf field revolving fund report. So we'd asked Joanna to put together just a year-to-year comparison of how our turf fields, the revolving fund was working. So I'd actually just like Joanna to walk you through that, if you don't mind.
I have a memo for you and then a one-page summary of the numbers of the revenue and the expenses. So just at a high level, the revenue comes from the 2 turf fields, the high school and McCarthy, and it comes from renting it to football, soccer, lacrosse, those kind of teams. And then the major expense is the bond and the interest. And as Dan pointed out, we have some other smaller expenses, such as the maintaining the field that goes along with it. To talk about the major expense, the bond was $800,000, and it's an 11-year bond, and we're a little bit, almost halfway through it, and it will retire in fiscal 2024. So if you go to the one-page summary of all the numbers, on the left is fiscal year 18, and on the right is fiscal year 19. And I sat with Dan last week, and we went over his revenue forecast, and it's pretty conservative. Like, it doesn't include the signs or anything, and it doesn't include any bookings that he doesn't know about. We expect $114,807 in revenue this year, and we expect the expenses to be $104,722 this year, building the reserve by about $10,000. The major, again, expense is the bond payment is $80,000 this year and every year, and then the interest this year is $17,000. That's a very high-level overview for 19. In fiscal year 18, just for comparison, the numbers were very similar, 103,000 in revenue and 104 in expense. And then the reserve right now is at $49,000. So any questions overall, high-level revenue expenses for the turf field revolving fund?
Just in January 2019, there's a big revenue income of $25,000.
Yep, so, good question. That was the naming rights. I kind of put a little box about midway down the revenue projection. There's a line that says naming rights 25,000. So we put out the RFP for actually both fields, and no one bid, but eventually.
For the high school.
Oh, for the high school. And then NRT bid on the McCarthy, and that's $25,000 a year for 3 years.
And what do they get for the naming rights?
The big giant sign on the field that says NRT field.
It's over the scoreboard.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you talk about what the salaries and other are under the expense accounts?
Yep, the salaries are just, we pay someone to go out and open things up. It's about $1,300 a season, summer and fall, and then spring. And then the other was, we split the cost of this grooming that Dan was talking about. We paid half and the town paid half.
Great, any other questions?
I did have one request in the budget that we're presenting at town meeting, that if the turf field expenses and revenues could be, I know we have that under the revolving accounts, if it could be broken out a little bit more, but maybe just this handout, I don't know, might be enough.
Yeah, let me go back and look at the budget book and see where we put it.
I just have a
We-
one-liner.
Is it a one-liner? We could, I mean, we're gonna produce the book later this week.
Okay.
We could add it as an extra appendices if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be great.
We could actually just put this, we have the enrollment report in. It's nothing to add an extra appendix at the back of the book.
That would be great. That was actually a request from some town meeting reps.
Yeah, do you think just this cover memo?
Yep.
And the report?
Yep, absolutely.
I'm gonna ask a question. This is because I'm new to this. So, this $49,000 that's in reserve.
Yes.
That's revenue that's available. It's under what are the rules or the guidelines for its use in the future and so on? Where
Just
do we
for
look
this,
for that?
for the turf fields themselves.
Okay.
So any expenses related to the turf fields. So if something happened and we didn't have rentals for a season because of late snow, but we still had to make the bond payment, we could tap into the reserve to meet that.
Obviously, these turf fields are used for many things in our schools, but is the goal of this that once 2024 comes around, we get all this money because the bond's not being paid and the bond is done? And does this eventually come back to the schools? How does this work?
The original, from what I understand, the original concept was to try to start generating enough revenue to be able to help defer the cost. I think some people wanted to actually pay for the whole cost. It's not gonna happen. But defer the cost for the new turf that has to go down. So a turf is gonna last you, say, approximately 15 years. So at some point in time, when we have to replace the turf, if we only have to pay off this bond for 11 years, we're minimally, let's say it went 15 years, we're minimally gonna have 4 years where we're not gonna be paying the bond payment. We might be able to actually, get close to somewhere around $500,000 in the fund that we could then put toward the new turf when it has to go down. And then we'll have less revenue that we're gonna have to sustain to
So
make the,
essentially, we're doing this for the purpose of using these fields?
it's to support the turf.
Right.
And it's a revolving fund specifically for that.
Because suddenly I was seeing 2024 and we get all this money, it'd be wonderful. I forgot that we have to replace the turf. Or it's not a turf
Some
field.
point.
Think of it, it's kind of like a
Thank you.
self-sustaining.
I was getting
type
very
fund.
excited about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Excitement's gone down.
But I will, I'll put this in the, budget book. Great,
Thanks, Jonah.
thank you. Number 10 of the evening is just your personnel update. This is a report that we just provide for you periodically to highlight some of the new hires, resignations, transfers within the district. Really just given to you for information purposes. Maria in particular, just so you can kind of see people coming and going from the district and, be able to put a name with a face if you're in buildings. So no action required. Obviously during the school year, there's not a lot of activity, but this was the activity for the month of February. So just submit it to you as a report of progress and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any other questions on the report? Okay. We're good.
Okay, and, last item for me this evening is just one field trip request and recommendation. This is for Chelmsford High School. We had a couple of students qualify for the DECA National, no, it's not a competition, it's not a tournament, which is at the end of April. So it's a request from the high school to send a couple of faculty members and those students to compete in the National DECA tournament, competition, I'm sorry. They did a great job being able to qualify at the local level, state level, and now they have the opportunity to compete at the national level. So I'd recommend your approval of that field trip.
So I make a motion to approve the DECA International Career Development Conference.
Second.
Okay. Any questions on it? So there's two students and two staff going.
Right.
one female, one male on
One
the staff?
female, one male.
Okay, and 2 female on the,
Correct.
okay. All right, any other? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. All right, any liaison reports?
I just have a couple.
Yeah.
The first one is the Chelmsford Friends of Music will be having their bottle and can drive this Saturday from 10 to 2. So please bring your bottles and cans. It goes to a worthy cause. On April 18th, the Special Education Parent Advisory Council will be having their Day on the Hill. So I'll be joining them. That's next week during April vacation. They also had a great presentation by Lorraine Wilson at their last meeting, and she was able to talk about social emotional learning and the counseling services. I know she'll be coming here at some point, so I look forward to that.
She's also going to be one of the primary speakers at the community forum.
Oh, fantastic. Right. South Row is going to be having their movie night on May 3rd and Engineering Day on May 29th. And I also want to mention that the community read-in is coming up, and that is going to be from May 28th through May 31st. And to see if we could get that on the district page, because community members sign up for that. So if there could be some kind of link for them. I know that, I think Ginger Skog, right, is coordinating that. So maybe she could send us some information so that we could put that on there. Hang on, I got more. This weekend, on Friday from 9 to 7, and on Saturday from 9 to 5 is the library, the Friends of the Library book sale. And I mention this because I'm not sure that teachers are aware, but from 5 to 6, so you can go and teachers can get books for free. So if they're looking for books for their classroom and things like this, is a great opportunity to go and fill up a couple boxes and get some books for free.
All right, anybody else? Sorry,
I'd just like to commend the staff and administration and students of the high school for the work that they all put in as the Rotary ran packaging of 12,000 meals for Rise Against Hunger. We've been doing this for a number of years, and we were commended just recently by the organization because Stina Cavarud from the English department really helped us a lot. But the deans, the principal, and over 100 kids put a lot of time and energy into it, and I just want to make sure they get credit they deserve.
How long does it take to do?
An hour.
An hour?
No, it's amazing. It takes a long time to set up, but it's essentially assembly line production. And what they do is every time we reach 1,000 meals, they bring a gong and they get one of the kids to ring it, and everybody cheers, and and it becomes a little bit competitive between the different tables that are producing the material. Last year, and I wouldn't be surprised, there's a small country on the bump of Africa that's agrarian in nature, and the country's in a desert. So there are places like this that they basically don't have a way of producing food year-round. And so starvation is a huge issue still in the world. And this is we do a lot for the schools, but this is one of our international projects, and it's great that the kids get an opportunity to hear how much they're helping with it. So.
Great. All right, any new items, people?
If we could just add the substitutes, the follow-up on that?
Yeah, I had put on my list.
Okay, and then also, it was about, yeah, and then we were going to talk about devoting some time in future meetings to transportation.
Yep.
So maybe deciding on that.
I have that down for May.
What's that?
I won't forget about you. I have that down for May.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Just a point of order, too. I was at the March 19th meeting. It was the attendance that was incorrect. So there is a correction on the...
Right. I noticed that, too. We'll make the correction.
We'll get it corrected. Okay.
Yeah.
March 19th,
Yeah.
yep.
He was present.
I was
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I thought I was there. It
Yeah,
was
no,
confused.
I saw it in the
Yeah,
text,
it was...
yeah. Just a reminder, well, we already mentioned it, but May 1st is Day on the Hill.
Yep.
So you have that. And then also a reminder that April 29th is town meeting. Typically, we go to that first night, the town meeting for the approval of the school budget, hopefully. Approval of the school budget, so just mark that down on your calendars. All right, anything else? Okay. All right, we're now to our public comment section. If there's anyone who'd like to come up to ask any other questions or have any comments, please come forward and give your name to the recording secretary.
Who is the recording?
Wait a minute.
Hi. My card. Okay, great, thank you. Oops. And I brought some packets. I didn't know how many people there would be here this evening, so, why don't I hand them to you, to someone as well, and you can pass them to the pertinent people. So, thank you very much. My name is Jeb Mays, and I work for Service Employees International Union, Local 32BJ. We are a large union all along the East Coast, and we represent cleaners and maintenance people. We wanted to speak with you briefly about the custodial work, which is out to bid here in the school district. So this packet was sent to the bidding authority, as we understood it, who is Mr. Cohen, the town manager. But because each town does things a little differently, it's my understanding the school committee is in fact the body that makes the decision. So I appreciate the chance to come talk with you. Our union, as I said, represents almost 170,000 workers along the East Coast, including about 20,000 here in Massachusetts, among whom are people who are cleaning some of your schools. And we are very glad that you have chosen, in some cases, to have what we call responsible contractors doing your work. And I'm just here to encourage you, as you look at the bids and look at the results, to consider looking not just at the bottom line, but also at other issues and other concerns that go into making a workforce that is good for you and the school district as well as for the people doing the work. Responsible contractors tend to have much more stable workforces, and also because they are signatories to a union agreement, they have agreed to set certain standards for the workers. Those include things like benefits and also making sure that everything is done according to the law. One of the things that we run into in the cleaning industry is that there are companies which are not necessarily doing everything above board. As you can imagine, pretty much anybody can open a cleaning company, get a couple of backpack vacuums and some mops and buckets, and you can call yourself a cleaning company. But it is also an industry that has a set of contractors who don't necessarily follow the law. In doing so, they are able to come in as your low bidders, and undermining companies that are in fact trying to follow the law in all ways. And so what I've given you in the packet is three things. One is the letter, which summarizes our information. The second is actually an interesting effort on the part of the Attorney General here in the state, who is doing, along with other states, an effort to curb what's called wage theft. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically, people are paid not necessarily the full value of what they're actually owed, either not paid all their hours, or shortchanged, or paid in checks that bounce, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, the cleaning industry has its share of companies doing that kind of thing. Lastly is a list of the responsible contractors, which, as I say, went already to Mr. Cohen, but we wanted to make sure that you had it as well. And I've given my card to the secretary, and am very happy to answer any questions at this point or at any point. And I don't know, I know that the bids closed about a month ago, and I don't know where you are in the process of making the decision.
during public comment, we typically don't go back and forth. We'll just tell you, the bids did close, and there were several. They're being currently reviewed, and at some future school committee meeting, there'd be a recommendation to award the contract. But it obviously we weren't done for tonight's meeting.
Right.
It would go forward at a future meeting.
Okay. Well, I do hope as the bids are reviewed that you take this information into account. And as I say, I'm happy to answer any questions should any arise at any point. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else that would like to speak, public comment? Okay, seeing none, at this point, I believe we are going to adjourn to executive session.
Correct.
And with the intent not to return to regular session?
Not to return, correct.
All right, I'll take.
I move to executive session and not return to regular session. Is that good?
Yep, you have to read the verbiage that's in the posting.
No.
Want me to help you? So it'll be a motion to adjourn to executive session with the intent not to return to public session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation
So
of an
read
open
this.
meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
May have a detrimental effect.
I move to go to executive session for the purpose of provide public notice of its intent to convene an executive session to discuss strategy with the respect to collective bargaining or litigation in an open meeting where may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and not return to regular session. Okay.
Second.
Second? Okay, any questions? All in favor?
Yeah, any roll call.
Oh, sorry. Al?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, Donna?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.